a through world for me. The sea, the sky, my heart and I are all an indigo hue. Without you, it's a blue, blue world.
Don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me. Anyone else but me. Anyone else but me. No, no, no. Don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me till I come marching home. Don't go walking down Lover's Lane with anyone else but me. Anyone else but me. Anyone else but me. No, no, no. Don't go walking down Lover's Lane with anyone else but me till I come marching home. I just got word from a guy who heard from the guy next door to me. The girl he met just loves to pet, and it fits you to a T. So don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me till I come marching home.
Don't give up with those lips of yours to anyone else but me. Anyone else but me. Anyone else but me. No, no, no. Watch the girls on the foreign shores. You'll have to report to me when you come marching home. Don't hold anyone on your knee. You better be true to me. You better be true to me. You better be true to me. Don't hold anyone on your knee. You're getting a third degree when you come marching home. You're on your own where there is no phone, and I can't keep tab on you. Be fair to me, I'll guarantee this is one thing that I'll do. I won't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but you till you come marching home.
Don't sit under the apple tree with anyone else but me. I know the apple tree is reserved for you and me, and I'll be true till you come marching home.
Check 1, 2, 3.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. I got a gal in Kalamazoo. Don't wanna boast, but I know she's a toast of Kalamazoo. Zoo, 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 zoo. Years have gone by. My, how she do. I liked her looks when I carried her books in Kalamazoo. I'm gonna send a wire, hopping on a flight, leaving Tuesday. Am I dreaming? I can hear her screaming. Hi, Mr. Jackson, everything's okay. K-A-M-A-M-A-C-O. Oh, what a girl, a real pimperoo. I'll make my bid for that freckle-faced kid I'm hurrying to. I'm going to Michigan to see the sweetest girl in Kalamazoo. Kalamazoo.
When I hear that serenading blue, I'm somewhere in another world alone with you, sharing all the joys we used to know. Many moons ago. Once again your face comes back to me, just like the theme of some forgotten melody in the album of my memory. Serenade. It seems like only yesterday, a small cafe, a crowded floor, and as we dance the night away, I hear you say forevermore, and then the song became a sigh, forevermore became goodbye, but you remain in my heart. So tell me, darling, is there still a spark, or only lonely ashes of the flame we knew? Could I go on whistling in the dark, At last, my love has come along. My lonely days are over, and life is like a song. At last, the skies above are blue. My heart was wrapped in clover. The night I looked at you, I found a dream that I can speak to, a dream that I can call my own. I found a thrill to press my cheek to, a thrill I've never known. You smiled, and then the spell was cast, and here we are in heaven, for you are mine at last.
what you say. Step aside, partner, it's my day. Bend an ear and listen to my version of a really solid Tennessee excursion. Pardon me, boy, is that the Chattanooga Choo-Choo? Yes, yes, track 29. Boy, you can give me a shine. Can you afford to board Chattanooga Choo-Choo? I got my fare and just a trifle to spare. You leave the Pennsylvania station about 3:45. Read a magazine and then you're in Baltimore.
Dinner in the diner, nothing could be finer
Than to have your ham and eggs in Carolina. When you hear the whistle blowing 8 to the bar, then you know that Tennessee is not very far.
Shovel all the coal in, gotta keep it rolling.
Ooh, ooh, Chattanooga, there you are. There's gonna be a certain party at the station.
Satin and lace.
I used to call Funny Face. She's gonna cry until I tell her that I'll never roam. So Chattanooga choo-choo, won't you choo-choo me home? Chattanooga, Chattanooga, get aboard. Chattanooga, Chattanooga, all aboard. Chattanooga choo-choo, won't you choo-choo me home? Chattanooga choo-choo. Stars are on my ceiling. I know why, and so do you. rainbows.
When you're in my arms, I know why, and so do you.
Darling, you and I know the reason why a summer sky is blue, and we know why birds in the trees sing melodies too. And while love will grow from the first hello until the last goodbye, so to sweet romance there is just one answer: you and I.
Morning, Governor. Good morning. Good morning. We're a little slow. Everyone's tired. Governor, good morning. Step over you. Good morning. Hey, on your mount. Hi, I'm a New Yorker.
How you guys doing? Good, the meeting's here.
Oh, okay.
With my friend Campoleo.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I am going to put this over. Okay, how's everyone doing here in North Conway today? Doing well in the Valley? All right. I'm your Executive Counselor, Joe Kenny. It's always an exciting time to be here to introduce a presidential candidate. Today we want to let Governor Christie know that Conway is celebrating its 250th anniversary. So, and with that, Governor Christie, I just got back from a Patriots game last night with my son, so I got to get the cobwebs out. But the governor also has a special occasion this Sunday. He's be celebrating his 53rd birthday. And the governor has brought his lovely wife, Mary Pat. And the governor's been around the state yesterday from Littleton to Lancaster to Berlin and now here in North Conway. And I'm going to hand it over to your most favorite state senator, Jeb Bradley, who is going to introduce the governor of New Jersey.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Joe. Always great to be in the Mount Washington Valley, and normally I'm dressed for hiking, so you get to see me dressed for work once in a while. There are a couple of elected officials here. Your selectman, Carl Thibodeau. Good morning, Carl. My colleague, Sam Cataldo from Farmington. And I'm sure everybody from the Mount Washington Valley remembers Bill Zella, former congressman from Jackson. So, you know, it's great to be able to introduce Governor Christie. While I haven't endorsed anybody, let me tell you how I started to learn about Governor Christie. I'm sure some of you remember I led the effort for pension reform in New Hampshire. So the first thing I did when I undertook pension reform is watch Governor Christie on YouTube talking about the issue and how to talk to people that had a vested interest in the system continuing the way it was, which in New Jersey's case and in New Hampshire's case, our pension systems were going broke. It takes a lot of gumption to be able to do what Governor Christie did. And Governor Christie is the only person in this race that I'm aware of that has detailed a comprehensive plan for entitlement reform. And with $18 trillion in an accumulated debt in our nation, if we don't have the next president of the United States of America not only talking about entitlement reform, but getting the job done the way he exactly did on pension reform in New Jersey, our country is in deep trouble. So that's why I'm pleased to be able to introduce Governor Chris Christie, and New Hampshire, keep doing what we're doing, asking the tough questions. Governor Christie, good morning.
Thanks for being here. All right. I am, thank you, Senator, Executive Counselor Kenny, Senator, former Congressman, all the people who are here. Thank you so much for coming this morning. Before I get going, I do want to formally introduce my backup that I got here this morning. The First Lady of the state of New Jersey has been traveling with me all over New Hampshire. She loves coming here. She's back again today. My wife, Mary Pat, is here. We've been married for 29 years. We have 4 great children. We'll talk about them a little bit during this as well. I'm sure they always come up in questions. Not that you ask them, but I use them as examples, which is why they're not here, because it mortifies them. It mortifies them completely that their father talks about them that way, especially in this kind of arena, but we do. I'll start where Jeb ended. The Manhattan Institute, conservative think tank down in New York City, just came out with a report this week. And they analyzed pension reform across all 50 states. And they pointed out New Jersey's as exceptional among all the states because they said most of the other states in the country, almost all of them, if they did any pension reform, did it to affect future pension holders, but did nothing to be able to save money today. Because, of course, politically for most folks, as Jeb implied, that's too hard. Because, you know, the people who are going to collect their pension in the future, you don't have to look them in the eye. And you're making the changes. But the people, and we know we need to save money today, but politicians don't want to do that. We did that in New Jersey. How did we do it? As Jeb talked about, we went out to the people who pay the bills. That's you. And we said, listen, do you get a lifetime pension from the job that you have? Do you get lifetime health benefits for the job that you have? Do you have that kind of system available to you, yet you're paying for it in ways that are just incredible? Let me give you the statistic from New Jersey. The average teacher in New Jersey who works 30 years pays $126,000 towards his pension and his health care over 30 years. and the benefit they get out for a lifetime is $2.4 million. $126,000 in, $2.4 million out. I guarantee you, if I asked for a show of hands right now of how many of you would put $126,000 in over 30 years to get $2.4 million out, I wouldn't be able to see this room except for a whole show of hands. And that's the way you talk about this. This is about fundamental fairness. It's not about trying to hurt anyone. It's trying to say, how do we afford to live? And I don't need to speak about that too deeply here in New Hampshire. You all understand that folks have to live within their means. And so that's why the very first speech I gave in this adventure running for president was on entitlement reform. Now, political advisors told me this is nuts. You don't want to talk about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid right out the box. They call it the third rail of American politics. Touch it and you die. Well, we decided we're not going to touch it, we're going to hug it. We're going to grab it and hold on to it. Because here's why. 71% of the federal budget this year is spent on entitlements and debt service. 29% is everything else the federal government does. Everything else. Entitlements and debt service are 71% of what we spend. And just so you don't think this is the way it's always been, when John Kennedy was elected president 55 years ago, you know how much we spend on entitlements and debt service as a percentage of the federal budget? 26%. We've gone from 26% to 71% in half a century. We're spending all our money in the rearview mirror and very little of our money looking through the windshield. That's not the way you build a great country. And so what do we do in this circumstance? Because Social Security, for instance, is very important, and we need to save it. And Harvard and Dartmouth just came out with a study a couple months ago saying Social Security will be insolvent in 7 to 8 years. Not 78 years, 7 to 8 years. It's not something that's long off in the future that we can say, well, geez, those poor people who are here then, they're going to really have a problem to deal with. It's our problem. Now, today. Because I don't want anybody who's on Social Security to have to worry about whether they're going to be able to get their check. So what do? I put forward, as Jeb said, a detailed plan, and he is right. I am still now 6, 7, 8 months into this race, the only one of 17 Republican candidates who have put forward a detailed entitlement reform plan. Go to chrischristie.com. It's there. It's a 12-point plan. Here's the good news. For 8 o'clock on a Friday morning, I'm not going through all 12 points. I can see the look of fear in your face. Oh, no. He wrote these 12 points. He loves them. He's going to tell us all of them. No. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let you go to the website and look at all 12 points. It's been scored, and it's going to save $1.2 trillion over the next 10 years. So you go on there and you can look at it, but I'll give you some of the highlights. First is we have to raise the retirement age. Why? Well, we're all living longer. It's a blessing. It is a blessing we're living longer, right? So the average age of a woman in America today, her life expectancy is 83 years old. The average life expectancy of a man today in America is 79 years old. And I saw a couple of you ladies smiling. I just want to warn you that 10 years ago, the gap was 6 years. 10 years later, it's 4. We're catching up. We're gaining on you. And now, that 4-year vacation you thought you were going to get from us at the end may not happen. You may be putting up with us for the whole ride. Yeah, I heard there's some groaning over here. I feel your pain, my dear. I feel your pain. But see, these programs, Social Security, Medicare, were designed for a time when people lived into their 60s, their mid-60s. So now we're living 15 to 20 years longer. How can we believe that we can keep these programs the same if we're taking out for that much longer? The math doesn't add up. And so let's increase the retirement age 2 years, and let's phase it in over 25 years. So understand what that means. Every year, your eligibility for Social Security would go up 1 month. 1 month every year. So when I'm the Republican nominee for president next fall, and I'm standing on the stage with Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Martin O'Malley or Bernie Sanders, for goodness sake, whoever it is, you know what they're going to say. They're going to say, Governor Christie wants to destroy Social Security. He's throwing grandma off the cliff. Well, let me just say this. If it takes 25 years to phase in these changes, that's like throwing grandma off Mount Washington. Going to take that long for grandma to hit the bottom, okay? It's not going to change anybody's life. For anyone who's on Social Security now or about to go on Social Security, it won't change your life at all. It's going to change a life for me, but only a little. Because think about it, 25 years from now, God willing, I'll be 78 years old. I'll be well into Social Security when this is fully phased in. And we're talking about raising the age from 65 to 67. So this is not going to stop the world from spinning on its axis. But what it does for our children and for your children and grandchildren is to get them a more solvent system over the long haul, to acknowledge that we're living longer and have the program work that way. Second, there's a big debate now about how to get more money into Social Security. There's two options. I'll tell you the one I like, and then I'll tell you the one Hillary Clinton's going to like. The one I like is this. I think we need to means test Social Security. And let me tell you exactly what that entails. If you make $200,000 a year or more in retirement income, it means you have retired and you have investments, not your home, investments that are throwing off income of $200,000 a year or more. That means you've got at least $4 to $5 million saved. The first thing I'd say to you is, congratulations. You lived a life where you could pay your bills, raise your family, and save $4 to $5 million for your retirement. God bless you, and God bless this country that gave you the opportunity to do that. But let me ask you this. If you got that $4 to $5 million saved, you're getting $200,000 in retirement income from that, do you really need a Social Security check? Is it really going to change your lifestyle to have that check every month? I'd suggest to you it won't. And especially, I don't think you want to take that check if what that means is the person who really needs it's not going to get it. See, I think Social Security is insurance. It's insurance against growing old and poverty. You know, we don't want folks who have played by the rules and paid into the system their whole life to have to worry about choosing between rent and heat and food. And that's what Social Security is all about, is to make sure that folks can grow old who have worked hard and put into the system, can grow old in security, not having to make those decisions. If you're making $200,000 a year or more in retirement income, you're not choosing between rent and heat and food. And that's great. I'm happy. We means test it that way. We can get more money into the system for those people who really need it. Now, let me tell you what Hillary Clinton's option is going to be. She's going to say, take the cap off the Social Security tax and let more money come in through taxes. Now, let me ask you a question. If any of you watched the debate in August in Cleveland, you may remember that Governor Huckabee and I went back and forth about entitlement reform. And, you know, what I said to him was, you know, he says, well, geez, if you do this, then you're confirming lying and cheating by the government. And I said to him, Governor, I hate to bring you the bad news, but the lying and cheating has already occurred. All right? They said there's a trust fund, right? Al Gore called it a lockbox, remember? Back to 2000? You poor people had to listen to that for a long time in 2000, right? Lockbox, right? Al Gore talking about the lockbox. You know what's in the lockbox? A stack of IOUs. They are spending your payroll tax today on other things and giving you an IOU. We'll pay you later. This is like closing the barn door after the horse already ran out. What we got to do to fix the problem is drag the horse back in. And so if we have a government that's already lied to us about Social Security and stole trust funds, why would we want to give them more money? If you raise taxes and give the government more money, what makes you think this time, oh, this time, they'll be serious about it. This time, they'll leave it in that lockbox. This time, they won't violate the trust fund. Forget it. The first time, there's a tough choice to be made, and they have to choose between cutting something or, oh, look at that pile of money over there that these old people are not going to use for a long time. How about I just borrow a little of that? It's happened before. It will happen again. Don't do it. If you have a choice, we're all trying to get at folks who have been very fortunate in this country to not have Social Security. So the two choices are pay more money now out of your paycheck, or if you've been very fortunate at the end, take less money from the government. I got to tell you the truth. Maybe it's just because I'm a conservative Republican, but I think even folks here in New Hampshire, in the live free or die state, right, who aren't conservative Republicans, would believe we shouldn't give the government more money. We can't trust them to give them more money. And so let's not do it. That's the way we're going to fix the Social Security program. And we can do Medicare the same way, same thing. Raise eligibility 2 years over 25 years. And for those who are making $200,000 a year or more in retirement income, right now we subsidize your Medicare premium 75%. How about we subsidize it only 10%? We'll still give you a subsidy, but only a 10% subsidy, rather than a 75% subsidy. You'll be able to afford it, and you'll still get great health care. Those things, combined with the changes to Medicaid and Medicaid disability insurance that, gratefully, I will not go over with you right now, will save this country $1.2 trillion over the next 10 years and use that money to solidify the program and to spend on other priorities that we may have in the government that I'll talk about later, like defense and investment in science and medical research, things that we need to do to improve the quality of our lives and our national security without having to raise taxes on the American people. So that's why I talk about entitlement reform, because it is the 800-pound gorilla. If we don't get to that, everybody, we are not going to be able to fix the problems of our country. Second thing I'll talk about really quickly, then go to your questions, is this. This president wants a legacy. He's desperately in search of a legacy, all right? So he decides to sign this deal with Iran and to use every bit of political pressure he can to get a minority of United States senators to just agree not to override his veto. What a resounding sense of support he must have. That he can get 35, 36 people of his own party just not to stick him in the eye with a stick politically. All right? He's going to have a legacy. I'm convinced he's achieved it. He's going to be the worst foreign policy president in the history of this country. How you could give the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world $150 billion and a pathway to a nuclear weapon, allow their Revolutionary Guard to be the people who are going to inspect their military sites to verify they're not cheating, allow them to develop ballistic missiles at the same time, lift the conventional arms embargo, and expect they're not going to use that money. They're not using it to build highways, everybody. They're using that money for Hezbollah and Hamas, for other terrorist activity, for adventurism in Yemen, and to make the world a more unstable and dangerous place, because we know what Iran wants. The same thing they've wanted for 36 years since they took our hostages in 1979. They want the reestablishment of a Persian empire. That's what they want. And that's why not only can't Israel believe that we're doing what we're doing, the Saudis can't believe it, the Emiratis can't believe it, the Jordanians can't believe it, the Egyptians can't believe it. The folks who know them best trust them least. Yet this president has decided to do this. And I'll tell you, I'm proud of one of my United States senators. Bob Menendez actually stood up and said, no, I'm a Democrat, but I'm not standing for this. It's wrong. And I am ashamed of our other state senator. Our other United States Senator, Cory Booker, yesterday said, it is a deeply flawed agreement and a terrible choice for the president to have made, but I'll vote yes. Now, let me just say this. If you need to know anything about what's wrong with Washington, D.C., it's that sentence, right? A deeply flawed agreement, disappointed in the president for doing it, so I'll vote yes. I mean, this is what happens to you when you get to Washington. Unless you are completely grounded in values, and there are luckily a number of folks who have gone and are in Washington who are, but most of them get down there and it's Alice in Wonderland, man. The whole thing gets turned upside down. It's deeply flawed. I'm deeply disappointed, so I'll support it. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. And that's why we got to change the way things are working in Washington, and we need to do it in a few ways. First, we have to have term limits. We have to have term. Why do I have term limits, right? Why do I have term limits as governor of New Jersey? Why does the president, thank God, have term limits as president of the United States? Yet members of Congress don't have term limits. They are indispensable. That's what they believe. You know, I've got a state legislator in my state who has now been in the state legislature for 41 years. Listen, man, go home. Go home. If you haven't accomplished twice what you needed to accomplish being down in that state capitol for 41 years, go home, man. It's time. And we got people in Congress who serve that long. We got people who go down there and never leave. And what they become is part of the furniture down there. Because all they care about is being called congressman, being called senator, having all the trappings that go along with it, getting the special table at the special restaurant in Washington, D.C., and have the waiter come over and say, Congressman, good to see you, sir. Good to see you, ma'am. Right? They forget that they're down there to do a job. For us, we sent them there. We need a president who's going to go down there and knows how to deal with a difficult group of folks. And I'll end with this. That's one of my single best resume items, everybody. I have had, from the moment I took my hand off the Bible as governor of New Jersey, a Democratic legislature. 24-16 in the Senate, 48-32 in the lower house. It's not even close. And I can guarantee you that while there are a lot of nice folks there, not one of them wakes up every morning and says, geez, how can I make the governor's day good today? How can I make him smile? How can I make him happy? How can I give him something he really wants? Believe me, that's not what happens. And I'm a conservative Republican. They're liberal Democrats. So, you know, people in New Jersey have a sense of humor, right? They've twice elected a conservative Republican governor and given me a liberal Democratic legislature. They're like the 13-year-old in the basement at your house doing the science experiment. Let's mix these two things together and see what'll happen, right? Well, something very interesting has happened. You know, you mix those two things together, you thought you'd have an explosion, right? But instead, what's happened in New Jersey is I've made sure that we have to make it work. Because the thing that frustrates all of you the most about government is that we bicker and bicker and bicker with each other, spend your money, and get nothing done. And what we've done in New Jersey is, yeah, I fight with them. I fight with them when I have to. I stand up and say what I believe in. But I also have a table in my office where they come. And that's where we resolve the issues of the day. We all go out and do what we have to do in public. But then when we get around that table, I say, okay, we got to figure out a solution. We've capped our property taxes at no greater than 2% growth a year. This is a state, and I know in New Hampshire, you understand the property tax problem. The thing you should know is your friends in New Jersey have it worse. But not much worse. Now, property taxes were going at 70% over 10 years before I became governor. 10 years, property taxes went up 70%. In the 5 years that I've been governor, property taxes have gone up 10. Because we capped it. And we agreed, a Democratic legislature and a Republican governor agreed to cap property taxes and cap the arbitration awards that public sector workers could get at no greater than 2%. How about that? Republicans and Democrats work together, right, to stand up to the unions and say, if property taxes can't go up more than 2%, then your salaries can't go up more than 2%. All in. Important thing to have done, we did it together. The pension reform that Jeb talked about before, we came to an agreement, myself and the leaders of the Democratic legislature, and that piece of legislation was sponsored by the Democratic Senate president, who is the president of the Iron Workers Union in New Jersey. He sponsored pension and health benefit reform with my support. And when we had 10,000 protesters on the steps of the State House, he and I stood together and we passed that legislation, and it saves $122 billion for the taxpayers over 30 years. We put together teacher tenure reform for the first time. By the way, you can blame us for teacher tenure. New Jersey was the first state 106 years ago to pass tenure for K-12 teachers. I apologize on behalf of my entire state 106 years ago. But now we have tenure reform in New Jersey, where if a teacher gets a failing evaluation for 1 year or a below average evaluation for 2 consecutive years, they can lose their tenure. Imagine we did that in New Jersey with a Republican governor and a Democratic legislature. We balanced 6 budgets in a row. We've never closed down the government. We don't have the option like you have here in New Hampshire for continuing resolution. When June 30th comes, man, it's either pass it or close it. That's what our Constitution says. And so when the Democrats controlled everything before I got in, they closed the government. 6 years with me in charge, we haven't closed the government once. We balanced every budget. We have $2.5 billion less in spending than we had 8 years ago. Not less increase, less spending. 9,500 fewer employees than the day I walked in. And all that has helped us balance this budget for 6 years in a row with a Democratic legislature and a Republican governor. My point to you is, I'm battle tested for Washington, D.C. I've vetoed 400 bills in 5.5 years. And you know how many of those vetoes have been overridden? Zero. So I compromise when I want to and need to, but I stand up and say no when it's wrong, and Republicans have stood with me on each and every one of those 400 vetoes. And Americans for Tax Reform just 2 weeks ago in Forbes magazine said that I vetoed more tax increases than any governor in American history. So they raised taxes and fees 115 times in the 8 years before I became governor in the state legislature. The governor signed it. We have had 0 tax increases in the last 6 years since I've been governor because I said we are not raising taxes on the most overtaxed people in the United States of America. My point to you is I compromise when it makes sense to. I stand up and fight on the things that are most important, and that's what we need in Washington, D.C. Someone in the Oval Office who's going to stand up and fight Congress when they're not doing their job, but also can extend a hand and work with them when we need to. That's the kind of country we need to have once again, and if you elect me President of the United States, that's exactly the kind of country I'm going to give you if you give me the chance. So now we're going to go to questions, and we're going to let this guy walk out. Let's clear the way here. We got a baby, we got a car seat, we got a backpack. Right? Give this guy a hand. He's working it. All of us parents have been there. God bless. That's great. All right, there's only one rule of my New Hampshire town halls, just one. We have some folks here from New Jersey. You know when you go to New Jersey, there's 4 rules. That'll tell you the difference between New Jersey and New Hampshire. We need 4 times the number of rules for a town hall meeting than we do here in New Hampshire. The only rule here is you raise your hand and I call on you. Don't yell out questions. The reason is I don't respond to yelled out questions. It's not because I'm governor of New Jersey or a candidate for president of the United States. It's because Mary Pat and I are the parents of 4. And that means we are finely trained in ignoring things that are yelled out at us. So you raise your hand. You don't mind if I take my jacket off, do you? No. All right, so we're gonna take the jacket off. You raise your hand. I'm gonna give the jacket to someone up here in New Hampshire, a great hotel manager. Saw my wife come downstairs with me one morning, and she went over to buy some coffee, and I was standing there waiting for her to come over, and I was talking to the hotel manager, and he said, Governor, it's so nice of you for you to wait for your aide to get coffee before you leave. And since I didn't want rumors to get around, I stayed there, so I said, not my aide, my wife. But she does offer to hold my jacket while I do this, so thank you, my dear, I appreciate it. All right. Okay, questions, raise them up. Yes, sir, right there.
Why do we pay bonuses to government employees for not doing an adequate job? Why can't we eliminate such a problem?
Listen, we don't pay bonuses to people in the state of New Jersey for doing their job. We won't pay bonuses to people in the federal government for doing or not doing their jobs. If I'm president of the United States, that's what you get your salary for. And the public should not be doing that when we're having all the fiscal problems we're having. It doesn't work. It doesn't happen in New Jersey, and it will not happen when I'm president of the United States. And thank you for your service. All right, yes, ma'am.
I'm from Massachusetts, and so I'm caught up in the
No, not you. I mean them. Turn up your microphone so people can hear you. Is it on? Let's go, guys.
I'm from Massachusetts.
There we go.
So I'm caught up in the windfall elimination provision, which means there's 26 states involved in that, where I only get I get 1/3 of my Social Security because I have earned a pension from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Now you add those two that I get to get, two pensions, and it's not even a week's pay. Every year, somebody in Congress gets to work on this, and nothing has ever been addressed. And so, like I said, 2/3 of our Social Security is taken away from us. So, I mean, have you come across anything?
You know what? This is the first I've ever heard of it.
Yeah.
So what I would love for you to do is give Britt your exchange contact information, email all the details, so that I can have our policy people look at it, and then when I come back up here, I'll answer it broadly, and I'll email you back with an answer.
Thanks.
See, I'm a trained lawyer. I'm a recovering lawyer. Actually, which means that on a moment's notice, I can make up an answer that sounds very convincing, but I really try not to do that. So it's the first time I've ever heard that. Let me learn about it. We'll email you an answer back on what I think about it, and then when we come back up here, we'll address it broadly to the whole group. But I don't want to answer something that I don't know about, and I don't know about that one. Yes, sir, in the back.
Is it true that the legislature can pass laws that don't treat all people equally? In other words, we're on Social Security. Why aren't they? Another thing is education. Is it true that the legislature's children will get free education where we have to pay $60,000 for a college?
Well, let me deal with the first part. Congress passes laws all the time that apply to all of us except them. Right? And you know what? And our party's just as guilty, by the way. Remember back at the Contract with America 21 years ago? One of the points of the Contract with America was that Congress will pass no laws that apply to the American people that don't apply to them. Yeah, we didn't do it. Our party didn't do it. And this goes on everything from, things like benefits that they get. Like, for instance, members of my legislature get a pension. The governor doesn't. I get no pension. When I leave, basically what will happen is I get, whatever I put away in a 401k while I was governor. That's fine. Like, I'm fine with that. But those folks get a pension. Congress gets a pension. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense that these laws that they apply to us don't apply to them, and it should. Now, on the education thing, that I'm not aware of. I'm not aware that children of members of Congress get free college education. I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's true. In fact, I'm 99% sure that's not true, because I know a number of our friends.
It's true.
It's true they get free college.
And members of Congress, at least when I was there, pay into Social Security.
They pay into Social Security. Yeah, they do. So, they don't get free education for their kids. They pay into Social Security. But they do get, after a certain number of years of service, a pension there. And that's something that, but be careful about that part of it. I'm not for it. I don't think they should get it. But here's the thing. When we were having that back and forth, Governor Huckabee and I on entitlement reform, and I'm talking about big changes we need to make to the program, and he says, well, I think what we should do is get rid of, pensions for Congress. Well, okay. I said to him in reply, I agree with that, but that's this much. That's this much money in a problem that's this big. So be careful for any of these candidates for president who are giving you the easy answer that makes you feel good. If there's an easy answer that makes you feel good, I want you to immediately become suspicious. Be like you're from New Jersey. Be completely cynical the minute that you hear anything, okay? Protect yourself, because some of this stuff just sounds too good to be true. It is. But they shouldn't be getting that kind of treatment, and they often apply laws to everybody else but not to themselves. And Obamacare was another example of that too, right? Yes, sir.
I'm from the state of New Hampshire, and from one Republican to another, I welcome you to New Hampshire.
Thank you, sir.
And I spent 20 years in New Jersey in the past, and I have wonderful memories. And when I went through New Jersey lately, I was flabbergasted. It was absolutely beautiful, and you're doing an excellent job.
Thank you.
And you're a great governor. And you went through thick and thin, but you stuck to Republicans. And from here on, we're going to call it the Republic of the United States of America. Now, between New Jersey and New Hampshire, because I've been here, there, most of my life here, but I'm like a guy torn between two lovers. And again,
I feel privileged.
I welcome you, and I hope you get elected.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
You're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you. Listen.
I gotta go get my work done.
All right, go get your work done. That a boy. I paid him $100 to do that, everybody. It's fabulous. I will. And you know, you should know, being governor of New Jersey is an extraordinary challenge, especially as a Republican. We have 750,000 more Democrats than Republicans registered in the state. Before I was elected in 2009, we had gone 12 years without electing a Republican statewide to anything. And, you know, I talked to you about my Democratic legislature. And the last piece is to let you know just how blue this state is politically. It's been 43 years since we elected a Republican to the United States Senate. It's the longest streak of any of the 50 states not to elect a Republican. So when he says, you know, I'm doing a good job there, it's a battle every day, but it's a job that I really love. And I'm glad to have the chance to do it every day. It's a lot of fun. Yes, sir, right here. I'll give you mine.
Good morning and welcome to North Conway. My name's Peter Hill. This morning, the market is waiting for the jobs report, although it's probably already happened, as the Fed may raise interest rates a minuscule 0.25% up from 0. These interest rates have been at 0% for 7 years now. This is destroying pensions, pensioners, and capital formation. My question to you as president is, what would you do as president to get a handle on the private, for-profit, and totally corrupt Federal Reserve that really has the potential to collapse the entire global monetary system?
You know, it's very interesting to me, thank you for the question, that this is a president who has harped over and over again about income inequality. Yet, the wealthy in our country have done better under this president than they've done under any president in recent memory. And here's the two reasons why. You touched on one of them. One of them is the easy money policies of the Fed. Who does that benefit the most? It benefits the investor class. The investor class who can get cheap money, turn around, invest it, and turn it into big profits. And, you know, the second reason for it is the extraordinary amount of government borrowing that we've done that's artificially propped up the economy and now leaves us with $18 trillion in debt and growing. Here's what I'd say to the person that I would pick as Fed chairman. I would say to them, listen, it's time for us to get real about monetary policy. Now, lowering the rates down to that level when we were in the middle of the meltdown in 2008 made sense. We had to do something to make sure that we avoided a calamitous economic collapse around the world. But like you said, it's 7 years later now. And what this is evidence of is not only the easy money policies of the Fed, but also that this is the weakest economic recovery from a recession since World War II. So they're afraid to do it politically because they're afraid that that'll put pressure on the job market. The problem, as you point out, is that this is creating an enormous bubble. And think about what it's doing. When we talked about 71% of our money now in the budget being spent on entitlements and debt service, that's when debt is at zero, right? When the interest rates are as low as they can possibly be. What happens when those rates start to go up, which they inevitably will? That 71% is going to grow much larger, everybody, when we start paying more and more in interest rates for the debt that we're running up every day. So we need a Fed that's going to stop with the easy money policies. It's destructive to our country's long-term future, and it's not good for the world economy either. And so you need to pick a Fed chairman who's going to be tough and is going to go in there and be independent and tough and make the decisions based upon what monetary policy should be, not what they hope will keep the president happy. And that's the kind of thing we have to do, and that's not what's happened under the last two Fed chairmen with this president. They're just looking to keep his numbers high, in my view, so that it doesn't hurt him politically. And what it's done, and by the way, the fact that it's helped the wealthy too, you know what happens with these Fed chairs once they leave? They get hired by these hedge fund guys and investment banks and all the rest of it who go, good job, baby. We made a lot of money while you were in there. Let's come and give you some. Let's give you some on the back end. So you raise a really important point. It is the first time, I will tell you, it's my 21st town hall meeting. This is the first time anybody's asked me about Fed policy, and it's incredibly important for our country's economic future and the stability of our currency. So thanks for raising it and giving me a chance to talk about it. It's important. Congressman.
What do you think about tax reform? Any ideas on
Yeah, we put forward a complete tax and regulatory reform plan that's on the website. Once again, I'll give you just the highlights. I will not go through every one of them so we don't get people glazing over. First thing on tax reform, Congressman, is this. I believe we need to simplify the tax code in this way. We should get rid of all of the deductions and all of the loopholes, except for two: the mortgage interest deduction and the charitable contribution deduction. Those are the things that normal, everyday, middle-class Americans use. Deduct the mortgage interest so they can continue to have their home, and give to charities that they believe in so that the least fortunate in our country can be helped. Other than that, most of the other deductions and loopholes are for the wealthy, are for the people. Most people here use the standard deduction. They don't even itemize. We need to get rid of all that, and in return, we'll lower the rates. So we'll lower the top rate. We'll get down to just 3 rates. We'll lower the top rate down to 28%, which is where it was when Reagan did tax reform in a bipartisan way with the senator from New Jersey, with Bill Bradley, in 1986, and the lowest rate being 8%. Then we'll do one rate in the middle. I'll negotiate which one in the middle it is with the Congress. And then you're going to be able to do your taxes in 15 minutes. Here's how much you made. Here's how much you paid mortgage interest. Here's how much you donated to charity. Multiply it times the bracket. Send your check and be done. Not only, now my father, who is a CPA, hates this. He's like, if you could get rid of that part of the speech, Chris, I'd appreciate it. I raised you. I helped to pay for your education. What are you doing? But I said, Dad, like, we got to do this. And secondly, imagine how many IRS agents I could fire if we made the tax system that simple, right? So, and I think it's going to keep more money in people's pockets. The second piece of it that we have to do is regulatory reform, as you know. This administration has regulated the American people more than any administration in American history. Last year, 2014, they issued 81,000 pages of new federal regulation in 1 year. It's the most ever by any administration. His own Small Business Administration, the president's own Small Business Administration, says that the average cost for a small business owner to comply with federal regulation is now $10,000 per employee. So you wonder why small businesses aren't creating jobs? Before they pay a tax, before they open the door of their business, it's $10,000 per employee just to comply with regulation. So I propose that we do what I did in New Jersey. My first executive order as governor of New Jersey, January 20th of 2010, was to freeze any new regulation from any department or agency of state government for 90 days. And to send my lieutenant governor out to hold public meetings across the state with business leaders and business owners to say, what are the regulations that drive you the most crazy, the most expensive, the least useful? Come back with that list. And at the end of our first year in office, we got rid of 1/3 of the regulation that our predecessor had put into place. I will do exactly the same thing as president. First executive order I'll sign will be to freeze any new regulation from any department or agency of the federal government, especially the EPA. And we'll then send the vice president out to do the exact same thing around the country. We did it in a bipartisan way in New Jersey. I invited Democratic legislators to come to these hearings because I wanted them to hear from real people about what Trenton was doing to them. And it was the beginning of my term, so they came. And they actually came out with us and listened to those stories, and many of them supported us in the regulations we got rid of. We got to do the same thing as a country. Last, on corporate taxes. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the world at 35%, and we are one of the few countries that double tax our corporate profits. So if you pay a tax over in Great Britain, you're an American company, you're making money in Great Britain, you pay a tax there, you come back to the United States, bring the money, net of taxes, bring the money net of taxes back to the U.S., we tax you again. So what's happened? As you know, $2 trillion is offshore that American companies won't bring back to invest in creating American jobs because they don't want to pay 35% in tax after they already pay tax someplace else. Well, I say let's get rid of the double taxation. Let's lower the rate to 25%, get rid of their loopholes and deductions as well, have them pay a flat 25%. But on the money that they're holding out there, we'll give them a one-time holiday. Bring it in, and we'll tax it at 8.75% that one time. That's money. Right now, we're getting 35% of zero. So 35% of zero is zero. Even a political science major can do that math. But 8.75% of $2 trillion is a lot of money. And what I'd use part of that money for that we didn't expect to get is to rebuild our infrastructure in this country. Rebuild roads and highways and bridges, tunnels, mass transit, because we need that money. And we don't have to raise the gas tax. We can bring this money in, use that money to spend on that. That's the way I would deal with the tax situation. And there's more detail that you'll particularly like in that plan. But it's very detailed, and I think it's a way for us to get to much higher than 2% growth in this country, which is where we need to get to help balance our budget and to provide jobs for the American people. Well, thanks for the question, Congressman. Yes, sir. Behind the camera. Yep. No, not that guy right there. Yep.
Thank you, Governor.
We'll get to you, sir.
And thank you for coming to New Hampshire. We do
I'm
appreciate
happy to be
it.
back.
Quick question. Do you believe that the unemployment rate is truly, I don't know what it is right now, 5-6%, whatever
No.
the number is? Can you make a comment on how that number is generated then?
Let me tell you something. As a governor who has to deal every month with the announcement of an unemployment rate in your state and the announcement of whether you gain jobs or lost jobs, it is the most mystifying, baloney-filled exercise. I mean, every month they give me a number. And then the next month they revise the number. Yeah. And the unemployment rate, like for instance, last month in New Jersey we lost about 10,000 jobs, they told us. They've now revised that. No, it wasn't really 10, it was 7. But yet the unemployment rate went down 0.2 of a point. I mean, you know, I don't know. I seriously think that there are guys and women in the Perkins building, which is where the Labor Department is in Washington, D.C., who just sit there and throw darts at a dartboard. I mean, it makes no sense. You know the unemployment rate, the real unemployment rate is significantly higher than what they're telling us, because people have fallen out of the job market. And so if you're not looking for a job, they don't count you in the unemployment rate. Well, you still don't have a job, man. So you're still unemployed. Just because you're not looking doesn't mean you're not unemployed. So I would suggest this to you. When you see you wait in the morning, you said the jobs report was coming out this morning, right? Do yourself a favor. When they say, here comes the jobs report, go up and get a cup of coffee. Because it doesn't matter. It makes no sense. We know, we feel what's going on in this country. And what we feel going on in this country is our kids are graduating from college and not being able to get jobs. We see folks who lose their jobs at midlife who can't find a new job. I don't care what he says the unemployment rate is. The job market in this country stinks. And it's bad and getting worse. And so what we need to do is forget about all these artificial numbers, and what we need to do is to start get growth in our country again, like I talked about with the congressman, and then you'll see. And I'll just compare it to when Mary Pat and I left college. Now, we went to college together. That's where we met. And she graduated in the mid-1980s. We don't want to be any more specific than that, do we? The mid-1980s. Well, I will tell you that I remember when she was graduating from college. We were engaged at the time. And it wasn't about whether she was going to get a job or not. It was about which job was she going to take. Which job gave her the best opportunity to start her career in the way she wanted to. Think about now, we have a 22-year-old son who's now going to be a senior at Princeton starting this month. I tell you, I talked to he and his friends. They had a hard time finding a summer job this summer. And they're all worried about whether they're going to get a job when they graduate. And these kids are graduating from Princeton, not a bad school. If those kids are worried about getting a job, what's happening to all the other kids in this country? And so that's why I think the unemployment rate is a fiction. You know, we all take bows when it goes down. We all hide when it goes up. But in the end, the number doesn't represent nearly the scope of the problem in this country. It's a much bigger problem. And, you know, I don't know. I don't know exactly how to fix it, but I almost don't know that it matters. What we have to do is fix the underlying problem, which is to get job growth in this country again. And I think by changing the tax and regulatory system the way I talked about, that's one of the ways we can get that done. Now, this gentleman who thought I called on him, we're going to go right back to him.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the question.
2 questions.
Sure.
Subject matter, immigration. Mm-hmm. Subject matter, college education, the cost of college education.
Mm-hmm. All right. I love New Hampshire, man. You guys are the exact opposite of New Jersey, right? In New Hampshire, it is a virtue to use fewer words. In New Jersey, it is a mortal sin. All right, immigration. First thing is, the frustration and the anger the American people feel is deserved. And here's why. The government has a job to do and we're not doing it. We're supposed to control our borders. We're supposed to run an immigration system in a fair and efficient way, and we're not doing any of it. So first off, the anger that everybody's feeling about it is deserved towards the government. So I think the first thing we need to do before we talk about anything else in immigration is, how do you secure the southern border and make people feel and have it be in reality that we are a sovereign country that's controlling who comes in and who comes out. I have a 5-point plan on this, and unfortunately, you're going to hear all 5 points. But the good news is they're quick. Point number 1 is, in the urban areas along the southern border, we should build walling and fencing, but just in the urban areas where there's heavy population and a lot of opportunity for people to sneak over. Please, please, please do not believe that we're going to build a 2,000-mile wall across the southern border, even if it's a beautiful wall. Okay? And having met President Peña Nieto twice, had long meetings with him twice, the president of Mexico, I can guarantee you something else. I don't care who asks him, he's not paying for the wall. Not going to happen, okay? So let's build walling and fencing in the places where we need it. Second, let's embed FBI, DEA, and ATF agents with Border Patrol agents along the difficult parts of the border so they can interdict the drugs and the guns that are coming across the border. I was a U.S. attorney for 7 years in New Jersey, the chief federal prosecutor in my state. I know that FBI, DEA, and ATF are the best trained people to interdict drugs and guns. Let's put them there. It's nothing against Border Patrol folks, but that's not what their training is for. The training by those other agents, those men and women, are much better. Let's put them down there and make sure that they're interdicting as much of the drug and gun trafficking as they can coming across the border. Third, we need to use electronic surveillance in the difficult parts of the border. Stationary cameras and drones with cameras flying along the more remote parts of the border. We don't want to put people there when it's so remote, but if we see things happening in those areas in real time with cameras, we can then deploy people to those spots to interdict the problems. Let's use the best technology we can to do it. Fourth, and this has gotten a lot of interesting reaction in the last week, which can only be explained by the fact that the press doesn't want to get it. Not that they don't get it, they don't want to get it. I made an analogy last week up here in New Hampshire, and I said, listen, 40% of the 11 million people who are here illegally are not people who came over the southern border, but they overstayed their visas. People who come in on student visas, visiting visas, right? Tourist visas, who we invite in. We say, come visit America. Come get an education here. Come visit and do tourism here, but only for a specific period of time. Then you need to go home. The visa is for a certain length of time. I said in New Hampshire last week, if Federal Express can track a package from the minute it leaves my house till the minute it gets to your house, then why is it that we can't track folks who come in here on visas? Now, of course, this is something that is just too smart and subtle for the press to understand. So then the reporting you've seen for the last week has been, Governor Christie wants to treat immigrants like they're packages. Governor Christie wants to put barcodes on every person who comes into the country. Governor Christie wants to treat you all like you're being shipped overnight. No. My point was, this was an analogy, that if they have the technology to do that, why can't the government have the technology to track folks who are here too long? And let me tell you, I had a reporter on CNN yesterday morning say to me, Governor, is your proposal to put a chip in everyone that comes into the country? I felt like looking at her going, you're kidding me, right? But I'm trying to be nicer. It's hard for me. That's because I'm from Jersey, that's right. So here's the thing. I'm not talking about putting a chip in anybody either. You know what? You don't need a barcode and you don't need a chip. You've got 10 of them. They're called fingerprints. They're unique to every human being on earth. I don't need to put anything new on you. But when you come in with a visa, you need to give me your thumbprint. And that thumbprint needs to go into a database. And then, if you overstay your welcome and you try to access something in this country, under a visa, you need to give your thumbprint. And if it pops up on the computer, you were supposed to leave 4 months ago. We then take you and say, thank you for coming. Wonderful to have had you. It's time to go back where you came from. Now, I don't think this is some kind of radical idea. And you know, I kidded around that, you know, I'd bring Fred Smith, the head of FedEx, in. He'd fix this in 3 months, right? The government only falls behind. We need to do that. That's 4.5 million people that are in this country, not because they snuck over the southern border, but because we invited them in. And then once we invited them in, we said, we know you're only supposed to stay 6 months, but we trust you. It's the honor system. That's how we got to 4.5 million. Fifth is E-Verify. The folks, let's take the other 6.5 million or thereabouts that came across over a border illegally. Why did they come? Not for the reasons Hillary Clinton tells you. They didn't come to vote. They came to work. They came to work. They came because they thought they could get a job in America and they wanted to work, support their families. Here's the thing. If we use E-Verify, then they can't get a job. And the rule should be this. If you're an employer in this country and you hire someone who's here illegally, then your fine for doing that is double the profit you've made. Double the profit you've made. Now, business folks are real simple folks. Whether you own horse feathers or whether you own IBM, you're in business to make money. And if I'm taking your money because you were dumb enough to hire someone who's here illegally, you're going to stop hiring people who are illegal. And if you stop hiring people who are illegal, that message gets down south of the border really quick, and they'll stop coming. If they know they cannot get a job, they won't come. And so we got to take part of the responsibility for this, everybody. Business is part of the problem here. And so we need to use E-Verify and do that. So that's the answer on immigration. The second point was college costs and student debt. And by the way, notice, all those things are things that we can do. It's all things we can do. And once we do that, then we can deal with the folks who are inside the country. But no one's going to let us pass new laws on immigration in this country until you actually have a president who proves you can enforce the ones we already have. So let's enforce the ones we already have. On student debt and education, this is now the 20th out of 21 town hall meetings that I've done in New Hampshire where someone asked me about that. This is an enormous problem, and I'll give you this answer. First, it's unconscionable that our students pay a higher interest rate than market rate for their student loans. And they're not allowed to refinance those loans. You can refinance a mortgage, you can refinance a car loan, but you can't refinance student debt. Why? Why should the government be making money off our kids? And that's what they're doing right now, and middlemen are doing it. So if I'm president, I let them refinance their loans at market rate. That's what we can borrow the money at. Whatever they can borrow the money at, they should have to pay that interest so we don't have artificially high interest payments for these folks. Second, I think our kids should get a national service option to help to repay their debts. There's lots of things we need to have done in this country. And if kids get out of college and have a large amount of debt, and they say, listen, I'll spend the next 2 or 3 years of my life contributing to my community, my state, my country, and giving service of value, we'll knock off what they've done in terms of those loans. We should have the option to do that. But neither one of those things deals with the cost side. Now, I said Mary Pat and I have 4 children. 2 of them are in college right now. Andrew's a senior at Princeton. Sarah is a sophomore at Notre Dame. We just paid those bills. We mailed the checks when? Like yesterday. The cost this year for the 2 of them is $122,000. $60,000 at Princeton, $62,000 at Notre Dame. So let me tell you a quick story about Notre Dame. About 9 weeks ago or so, we got a letter from Notre Dame addressed to me and Mary Pat. I opened it up, and it was from Father John Jenkins, the president of the University of Notre Dame. The first paragraph went something like this. Dear parents, thank you so much for the blessing that you bestowed upon us by entrusting the souls of your children to the University of Notre Dame for their education over the next number of years. When you got done with that paragraph, right, you could hear Rudy playing in the background, right? You close your eyes, you could see the Golden Dome, you could see Touchdown Jesus, right? It's a priest, man. I'm Catholic. Your heart's pounding. Wow, my kid goes to Notre Dame. Unbelievable. So what's the second paragraph? Any of you who are Catholics, you know it's the money paragraph, right? The priest has the collar on and the money paragraph is coming. Because that's why we're so pleased to tell you that this year, tuition will only increase 3.9%. Now, remember, inflation is 1.5%. So it's nearly triple the rate of inflation. They're pleased to tell us that. 3.9%, which is the lowest increase in tuition at Notre Dame for 40 years. Think about that. A 4%, nearly 4% increase in tuition is the lowest it's increased in 40 years at Notre Dame. And they said, that's why we're so pleased to tell you. The total student cost this year will be $62,000. Now, imagine what happens right after that. So I pick Mary Pat up off the floor. We sit down at the table. We gather ourselves. Imagine if we thought at that point, you know what? At $62,000, Notre Dame's not a value anymore for us. It just isn't. We've made the decision. Financially, it doesn't make sense. Okay. Then we call the 19-year-old daughter to the table to say to her, Sarah, we know you love Notre Dame. She told me last year during her spring semester, Dad, I obnoxiously love my school. Right? She's thrilled. She's happy. She loves it. We call her to the table. We say, Sarah, it doesn't make economic sense anymore for us to send you to Notre Dame. We're sending you to someplace else. Any of you who have or have had a 19-year-old daughter knows what would happen next. The crying, the stamping of the feet, the running upstairs to the room, the slamming the door, you're ruining my life. And what would Mary Pat and I do, as most parents in this country would do? We'd figure out any way we could to make sure we sent her back. Because we want her to be happy, and we want her to get her the best education we can, and I know she's getting a good education at Notre Dame. Guess who else knows that whole scenario? The colleges. They know there's no market force on them. None. They know we're going to cave. They know. So they just jack it up. Because they know we won't say no unless there's absolutely no way. And because of these loans that are available in unlimited amounts, they know there is a way. So we have everything conspiring against us to control costs. So here are two things we need to do to control costs. First, for any of you, how many of you, by raise of hands, how many of you have folks in college right now? Right? Okay. Is it the most opaque bill you've ever seen in your life? Right? It's 3 lines, right? Tuition, room and board, other fees. $62,000. Now, if you all stayed for breakfast this morning at Horse Feathers, and this wonderful person waited on you, and at the end, she brought over a check, and you turned it over and it said, food, $40. And that's all it said. You'd call her back over and you'd say, excuse me, like you a lot, you're very nice, but could you detail out what we had and how much each one of them cost, just so we know. For a $40 bill, you would do that. For the $62,000 college bill, where do I sign? Where do I send my check? I know it's only 3 lines, but what the heck? I'm sure you guys are on the up and up, and we're happy to pay it. Crazy. We'd drive her nuts to itemize the bill. Notre Dame, throw it in. Who cares? It's only $62,000. What's the difference? We need to make them detail what they're spending this money on, because if they do, there's going to be a lot of embarrassment going on. I talk to people at UNH. Do you know they have a rock climbing wall at UNH? Okay. You have rocks. Right out there. What the hell do you need a rock climbing wall for? Tell the kids at UNH, go outside and climb those rocks. Not the rocks inside, climb the other rocks. What have I found as I've gone around the country? There's a rock climbing wall epidemic going on. There's a rock climbing wall at Notre Dame. 2 of them, in fact. There's a rock climbing wall at Princeton. I went to Iowa State. There's a rock climbing wall there. They're everywhere. God knows what else they're building on these campuses that's costing us a ton of money that we don't know. Imagine if you saw the bill and if we had 1% of your tuition went to the rock climbing wall. We would march on these places. Do they really need 4 Starbucks on every campus? Can't we just have them walk to one of them? These are all happening right now. So we need them to list out what they're billing. Second, we need to allow them to unbundle the bill, right? So you pay for the things you want to pay for, that your child will use, and not the other stuff. That's the way we put a market test on this, everybody. Because if 85% of the people don't pay for the rock climbing wall, guess what? No more rock climbing walls, right? Well, listen, we can't, this woman should be from New Jersey. Well, close enough then, all right. The fact is, they're building buildings on every campus that are monuments to their own ego, and they're not necessarily needed. We need to have them detail what they're going to do. Now you say to me, how are we going to get that done as president? One way. If you want to participate in the federal student loan and the federal grant program, you've got to do these things. And if you don't, then no kids who go to your school can get federal loans or federal grants. Believe me, they're taking our money. They should tell us what they're spending it on. And I think with those moves, we could contain tuition. And so, you see, I was exactly right about the difference between New Hampshire and New Jersey. He asked me those questions in like 4 words, and I answered them in 4,000. Yes, ma'am, in the booth.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming to North Conway.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. As a former New Jerseyite, I'd like to welcome you again.
Thank you.
And also, as a strong Catholic, I would like for you to talk about your pro-life issues, please.
Sure. In fact, I have an ad up in New Hampshire right now talking about this. I'm pro-life. I'm the first pro-life governor in New Jersey history since Roe versus Wade. Everyone told me when I ran for governor in 2009, and I told them that I was pro-life, that there was no way I could win. That in New Jersey, which is essentially a pro-choice state, that there's no way they'd elect a pro-life governor. They were wrong. They not only elected one, they re-elected one. And I think it's because I've just been very honest with the folks in New Jersey about my view on this. I think every life is precious and every life is a gift from God. And I think we have to protect each and every life. But my pro-life position goes beyond the womb. Okay, it's easy to be pro-life when they're in the womb. They haven't disappointed us yet, right? Easy. I'm also pro-life for the 16-year-old who's drug addicted on the floor of the county lockup. Her life is precious too. And the fact is that the reason that our position as pro-life folks are allowed to be narrowed to just those 9 months is because we're not talking about the other stuff. I believe that we need to move in this country away from incarceration for nonviolent drug offenders and towards treatment. And the reason for that is pretty simple. It's not that I'm soft on 7 years of my life putting people in jail. But what we know is that drug court works. In New Jersey, we're the first state in the country that has said for any first-time nonviolent And the analogy I'll give you is that, you know, my mom was a lifetime smoker. She started smoking when she was 16 years old, and she got addicted. And she tried in every way she could. I watched her whole life struggle. Gum, patches, all kinds of other stuff to try to quit. She never could quit. And when she was finally diagnosed with lung cancer, did we say to her, we're not going to give you treatment because you're getting what you deserve? You knew smoking could cause cancer. You smoked anyway. You got cancer. You're getting what you deserve. We're not going to treat you. Of course we didn't. Why do we have that attitude towards drugs? We say, you use drugs, you got addicted, go to jail. Well, if you're violent, yes. If you're dealing drugs to other people, yes. But if you're a user, we need to try to give those people the tools they need to deal with their addiction. And so that's why we're doing that in New Jersey. And let me tell you what's happened. The recidivism rate across the country for folks who are drug addicted, who get in the criminal justice system but don't go through drug court or any treatment is 62%. 62% of those people within a year recommit crimes. If you go through drug court and get treatment, the recidivism rate in this country is 16%. It works. It works. Not for everybody, but it does work. And we need to be committed to that. So when I say I'm pro-life, yes, I oppose abortion. I think it's abhorrent, and I think we have to work every day to win hearts in this country, that every life is precious. And as science and technology gets more and more acute, we learn more and more about how soon that life feels pain and is viable outside the womb. So we need to continue to learn about this issue, and leaders need to continue to talk from their heart about it. But we better not stop at 9 months. If we're the pro-life party, which the Republican Party is, then we need to be pro-life for the whole life. And that means no assisted suicide, that only God should decide when someone leaves this earth, not men and women. It means treating drug addicts so that they don't lose their lives, they don't give their lives away. And it means protecting life in the womb. So I'm pro-life for the whole time, from the minute that life is conceived until the moment that God calls it back to heaven, and everything in between. And sometimes the in-between is really messy, everybody, really messy, but we better be on it. And I think if we are, more American people will become pro-life. If they hear us speaking that way and believe that's what we feel in our hearts, that it's not just a political issue for 9 months, but it is a lifelong issue of protection of life, then I think we're going to win more converts to our cause. And that's what we need to be talking about. That's why I went up with that ad this week, because I want people to understand that pro-life shouldn't just be a slogan for something during a time that a woman is pregnant, but it should be an absolute policy that we follow the entire time that life is on Earth. So thanks for asking that question. All right. Yes, ma'am, over here.
Hi, I'm also a former New Jersey person. I've only been in
These former New Jerseyans, they're everywhere. It's unbelievable.
I've only been in North Conway for 2.5 years, so it's very recent.
All right.
I just left New Jersey. So, number one, we really appreciated your candor and your mentality and your tact during Superstorm Sandy, because that was really tough. My husband works in law enforcement, so he was working 36 hours straight through the whole storm. And so my question comes back to this. You talked about protecting life, and if we want our country to become one, like solidarity again, our current president has basically been silent on like law enforcement, veterans, and everything. Everything is separate right now.
Yep.
And in order to make it come full circle and come back to supporting those that risk their lives every day, how do you feel and what are you going to do to make the relationship better?
Sure. Well, first off, it's a great point you raised. And this president, who quite frankly, a lot of folks in this country put a great deal of hope into, that he would, because of his own particular personal circumstances, being the first African-American president, would really have an opportunity to unite our country in a way that other people hadn't. Unfortunately, after 7 years, we know he's divided this country more than any president in recent memory has divided this country. He has. And beside the Iran deal, it's the single biggest failure of this presidency, is his failure to unite our country. I spent 7 years in law enforcement, working with police officers, agents, prosecutors. And so I know what they sacrifice every day. We need to be speaking about this differently as the president. Here's what I think the biggest problem that's led to this, both in veterans affairs and in law enforcement. This president has encouraged a culture of lawlessness in this country. A culture of lawlessness. Let me be specific about what I mean. We have sanctuary cities all over this country who refuse to enforce the immigration laws, and the president looks the other way. That's lawlessness. We have certain states in this country that now say it's okay to smoke marijuana recreationally, despite the fact that the federal law says marijuana is against the law. The president looks the other way. It's lawlessness. The president signs executive orders that he knows are illegal because he's frustrated that he can't get what he wants, like a little petulant child standing in the corner and holding his breath. That's lawlessness. And now his former Secretary of State, who wants to be president, has apparently caught the same disease. And she believes the law doesn't apply to her. That she can have her own private email server and have national security secrets on that server susceptible to being hacked. And not only can she do it, but that she doesn't have to answer to us. You had a reporter ask her 3 questions the other day, and she said to this reporter from Fox News, to Ed Henry, she said, "I'll give you one question because that's what I believe you're entitled to." Well, thank you, Your Highness. Your Royal Majesty. We walked away from a monarchy. This country doesn't grant power by familial assent. And we better be careful about that in both parties. Okay? That's not the way it works. You earn it. And so this lawlessness is something that needs to be stopped. I think people would be calmer and more united if they knew that they had a president who was going to apply all the laws, even the ones he doesn't like, that he was going to do it fairly and justly. The laws apply to everyone. I will guarantee you one thing if I'm president. Law and order will be restored in the United States because you will have a former prosecutor sitting behind the desk in the Oval Office who knows how to apply the law and who won every corruption case he ever brought as U.S. attorney because I do it on the facts and on fairness, not based upon what I feel or think. That's what we need to do to bring some unity back to the country. Let's talk about law enforcement in particular. In New Jersey, we have a city that was named for many years the most violent city in America. Camden, New Jersey, right? Now, you know that in Camden, the murder rate was out of control, given the size of this city. And so what did we do? 3 years ago, right before you left, apparently, 3 years ago, I went to the mayor of Camden, Dana Red, who's an African-American Democratic woman, and I said to her, Dana, we got to get this under control. She said she agreed. They had a bloated union contract in that town. You know, they had 240 police officers. There was as high as a 40% absentee rate among the police force on a daily basis, and crime was running rampant. So we said, we're going to fire the entire police force, and we did. The Democratic mayor and I fired the entire Camden City Police Force, and we went to the county of Camden and we said, you hire a county police force, we'll give you the same amount of money, and have this county police force patrol the city of Camden. So it's the Camden County Police Metro Division. For the same price we were paying 240 cops, we hired 400. And we said to those new police officers, listen, we need to approach Camden differently. We have to have community policing. We need you to get involved with the community. We need you to be walking the beat, riding bicycles, not just in cars. We need you to do town meetings. We need you to do this differently than it's been done before. Let's try it, because what's happening right now isn't working. What happened in Camden in the last 3 years? We've had very low absentee rates among the police officers. We have police officers who now be permitted to unionize. If they want to unionize, that's fine, but we got to have some fairness. And they're walking beats, riding bikes, and you know what the murder rate has done in the last 3 years in Camden? It's down 61%. Because of what you're talking about, that not only do we have more police officers on the street, but those police officers are being treated differently by the community. The community now sees them as part of the solution, not part of the problem. They're not fighting each other, they're supporting each other. That's what these police officers always wanted to be. That's why they got into law enforcement in the first place, was to protect and serve. And now we're encouraging the community to be part of that, and most importantly, they are. And they're making a huge difference in that city now. We have businesses moving into that city now. The Philadelphia 76ers are moving their entire operation to Camden. The only thing they're going to do in Philadelphia anymore is play games. Their practices, their offices, their training facilities are all going to be in Camden, New Jersey. One of the newest nuclear power companies in the world has now decided to move their corporate headquarters to Camden, New Jersey. And Campbell's Soup decided not to leave and build their new world corporate headquarters where it's always been in Camden because they saw the changes we were making. The point is you need leadership at the top that makes this a priority. And that says we're going to enforce the law. And if you don't like it, too bad, you're going to jail. And we're going to support our police officers. And on our veterans, it's got to be the same thing. We made a promise to our veterans when they joined. We said, you put your life in harm's way, you defend your country, we're going to give you health care for the rest of your life. And then we give them a VA system that doesn't work, that lies to them, that doesn't give them access to care when they need it. So what I would do as president is every veteran in this country, take your veteran card, go to any doctor or any hospital in this country, get your health care, and we'll pay for it. That's what has to happen now. And secondly, because I don't want to abandon the VA system, because there's a lot of great expertise at these VA hospitals, at many of them, to help veterans with particular problems, both physical and psychological. So I would go out, my Secretary of Veterans Affairs is going to be the very best hospital executive I can find in America. And I'd go to that man or woman and say, listen, your country needs you for 2 years. Leave your private hospital system, come and fix this huge hospital system that America runs so that our veterans can get the care they need at veterans hospitals when they want to go to those. We don't need, with all due respect to the generals and the admirals, we don't need another general or admiral running the VA. What we need is a hospital executive because it's become a healthcare delivery system. And we need a hospital executive to do that. That's what I do as president. So I'm sorry we lost you 2.5 years ago. But you picked a good place to come. And now you can vote for me here. So she had the opportunity to vote for me there, and now vote for me here. Now my staff is telling me I have one more question, but I'm going to do 2. You know why? Because I'm the boss. I get to do that. So go to the lady on the couch. I'll give you my microphone.
Thank you, and welcome. I'm a Jersey girl as well. I guess it's in our blood. And I found it ironic that you're staring at Bruce Springsteen's poster as you do this, Jersey girl. My question, though, or statement, rather, I work in our local emergency department. We're a rural area. It's a critical access hospital. I'm frightened about the direction right now they're going in. We're small. We're a terrific hospital. We serve people from around the world. We get a lot of tourists in this area, so it's a vital part of the community. My question to you is, what are your thoughts on healthcare right now? It's frightening.
It is really frightening. And the fact is that people forget, and this is the underpinning of my idea on healthcare, people forget that all healthcare is local. All healthcare is local. And you know, healthcare you can talk about in general in a national way, but if it's not being delivered close to your home, where you can access it when you need it, then all it is an academic conversation. So here's what I would do. Of course, like any thinking, breathing human being, I would repeal Obamacare. But it's not enough just to do that. We got to replace it. So here's how we replace it. And I'll use our 2 states again as an example. Why would we think that their national health care system could be devised that would appropriately deal with the challenges that face New Hampshire and New Jersey in a way that was efficient and effective? Now, can I have that coat back, my aide? Thank you. We're going to use this as a prop. All right. So on my jacket here, I have this pin that I wear all the time of New Jersey. You see the size of New Jersey, right? And we have this pin here that I wear in New Hampshire of New Hampshire. And we're about the same size. Right? But you have 1.3 million people. Thank you. You have 1.3 million people. We have 8.9 million people in about the same space. So if you wonder why we're a little edgy and a little aggravated, we're on top of each other, man. It's a little edgier. It's a little tougher. Here, access to care, as you implied in your question, is often about distance. Right? It's about, in New Hampshire, especially up here in the North Country, how do you access care, the best specialists you can access for the problem you have? Often it's a distance problem. In New Jersey, you trip over a hospital every 4 miles. They're everywhere. I have more hospitals than I know what to do with in New Jersey. We're closing hospitals in New Jersey because we have too many. And so our access problem is not distance, our access problem is cost. Because everything in New Jersey is more expensive in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area, and cost becomes a huge driver. How can that system that you devise in Washington, D.C. address those 2 problems in a way that makes sense? So my solution is the state should run this. So let's let the governor and the legislature here in New Hampshire work with the people in New Hampshire to decide what healthcare system works best for you. Federal government says to you, you got to come up with a solution. You can't opt out. You got to come up with a solution. But the state comes up with that solution. Here's why that's good. Not only do the people in the state know better, healthcare providers, politicians, the other folks involved, insurance companies, and all the rest involved in the system, knows what's best for this state, much better than the folks down at Health and Human Services in Washington know. But also, if it starts to go wrong, you have the ability to be able to access the decision makers in a way that's real. Like, you know, I say we trip over hospitals every 4 miles in New Jersey. You trip over state reps every 4 miles. In New Hampshire, right? Got 400 of them, right? I mean, I tell you something, man, it's the most confusing thing about being a presidential candidate and coming here. Every time I take 5 steps, this is state rep, then this is another state rep, and man, they're everywhere, right? Well, here's the good thing about that system in New Hampshire. Then you can access the people who can make change for you very quickly. This morning, sitting here, we've got 2 state senators, we've got an executive counselor, the people who are in the midst of making the decisions for the state every day.
And we have a state rep back there.
Where? Of course we do. Only one? Only one state rep this morning? Where are the rest of you people? Where are you? Right, you have access to these folks on a regular basis to be able to say to them, whether it's at the dry cleaners or the deli or on the soccer field or the football field, wherever you are, you can see them, talk to them, and make a difference. And believe me, I know that they hear from you. We need to have a state-based system that each state devises for itself. The solution in New Jersey is different than the solution in New Hampshire. And you can guarantee the solution in New Jersey and New Hampshire is different than the one for Wyoming. And so let's acknowledge that we're a country of 50 states. And let's remember the last principle about this is important. We go back to the Constitution. The Constitution in the 10th Amendment says that anything that's not delineated in this document, any power not delineated and delegated to the federal government in this document reverts to the states. I don't see health care in the United States Constitution, right? This should be a state problem to solve. And I believe, I'm confident that the governors and the legislatures will be able to solve this problem. It's in their interest to do it. I mean, I don't know if I have faith in this governor to do it, but you know, we got Bradley and Kenny and the rest of the crew. They'll keep her in line as they're doing right now. So that's what I would do on health care. And I think it's important to get it out of Washington and get it back to the states where practical people like yourself who are dealing with this every day can have input into how you could say this is the way the system will work better. And I think that'll be a much better program. We are a country of 50 states, and we should acknowledge that and draw strength from it. And I think in our healthcare system we could. All right, last question. Yes, sir, right there.
What are your thoughts on increasing the military when we've really gone downhill?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had this conversation last night in Berlin with a guy who thinks that things in the military are going just fine. And he and I had a back and forth about that. This president has diminished the strength of this military more than any president since Jimmy Carter. And the fact is that we need to do more, and that's why we're being taken advantage of around the world, I think, because they know we're stretched too thin. This president has just ordered another 40,000 troop reduction in the Army. We're going to be getting that to nearly a 400,000 person Army. I've put out a very detailed plan on this. You'll be shocked to know, but I did. That goes to troop levels and in that kind of specificity on the website. I'll go through it real quickly with you. I think we need to get the Army to no less than 500,000 active duty soldiers at any one time in the Army. In the Navy, we are heading down to a 260 ship Navy. This will be the smallest our Navy has been since World War I. This makes no sense. We need to get up to a 350 ship Navy, and we need to modernize the Ohio class of submarines so that we can make sure in the South China Sea the Chinese are not dominating that waterway. And the only way we can do that is by having the type of naval hardware that we can deploy and make sure that we keep the waterways in this world safe for passage by peaceful people, both in commerce and in tourism. Third, the Air Force. This president has proposed a 50% reduction in the Air Force. We need to be at no fewer than 2,600 operational aircraft in the Air Force. And we are well below that now. We need to get up to that level. That's part of why I say we need to save the money in the entitlement system we do. Because if you're only at 29% for everything else, you can't rebuild the military in that way. The last piece of it is, and you know this as a veteran, our intelligence capability has to be juiced up as well. Warfare has become much more complicated. We're not fighting nation states for the most part anymore. We're fighting terrorist organizations that are everywhere, not just within the borders of a country. Intelligence is incredibly important then to know where they are, who they are. That's why in the last debate you saw me have that back and forth with Senator Paul. I mean, we have fundamental differences on that. I believe in civil liberties like he does, but I also believe you can't practice your civil liberties from a coffin. Don't forget that, everybody. All right? My point on this is we need to give our intelligence agencies the capabilities they need to be able to find the bad people before they find us. And so this whole, back and forth on the NSA and the bulk gathering of phone records, if you listen to Senator Paul, he would have you believe that we're listening into your phone call with your mother and reading your email to your child, neither of which is happening. You know what's happening, what the NSA was doing? They were collecting all these phone records and downloading them into a computer system. And then they were running a program that matched those numbers, those records, numbers in your records, against the known telephone numbers of terrorists around the world. And if you were receiving or placing phone calls to the number of a known terrorist, then and only then could we go to court, get a warrant, and get your records. Only then. That's why when I was having the argument in the debate, and I said, he said, I want to get less information from innocent people and more information. And my question was, how do you know? They don't walk around with a sandwich board on saying, I'm a terrorist. How do you know? The judge and say, hey, Aaron's getting phone calls from Al-Qaeda. I think I should look at his phone records and see how frequently this is happening. A judge is going to go, you bet. Let's find out unless he's doing a story on PBS in New Jersey on Al-Qaeda, Aaron's going to be in big trouble, all right? We're going to go and find out, but that's what you need to do. So the last piece of our military has to be supported by intelligence. Because if we don't, we put our men and women in greater harm's way. You know that. When they don't know what they're walking into, they're much more apt to be killed. If they know what they're walking into, then they're much more likely to be successful. So that's what I would do. We gave a whole speech in Portsmouth on our military and our national intelligence capability. That speech and the underpinnings of the plan is on the website. Go look at it. It's not like what these other folks are doing in these debates saying, I'm for a strong military. Well, hell, who isn't? But what's that mean? See, here's the point. And since this is the last question, I'll end with this. 7 years ago, a majority of the American people voted for a bumper sticker. Right? We voted for hope and change. There's a bumper sticker. Wonderful words, okay? Great words. Love hope and change. Who doesn't? Hope and change is wonderful. If I told you hope and change was going to be the weakest recovery from a recession since World War II, if I told you hope and change was going to be dealing with radical Muslim extremists in Iran, if I told you hope and change was going to be war in Syria, war in Libya, war in Egypt, war in Jordan, if I told you that all that stuff was going to be hope and change, and it was going to be Obamacare and taking over the national health care system, if I told you that was hope and change would still be sitting in Illinois. So this time, let's be smart. Ask us exactly what we intend to do if we're president. Ask us exactly what we intend to do. Not just platitudes, but exactly what we intend to do. Because I'll guarantee you this, I still think Hillary Clinton's going to be their candidate. And when we get on that stage in September of 2016, it's going to be no picnic. And the press who's asking those questions and Secretary Clinton standing across the stage is not going to let the Republican candidate for president get away with platitudes, generalities. We got to be ready to answer. And you need somebody on that stage who's going to be ready to prosecute the case against Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and what they've done to this country over the last 7 years. So I suggest to you that one of the ways you got to decide who to vote for in this wonderfully limited primary of only 17 candidates is who's going to be the person who's going to best prosecute that case on that stage. Because you know that's when this election is going to be decided. Just like it was decided by those debates 4 years ago, it's going to be close enough that it's going to be decided by how our candidate performs on that stage against Hillary Clinton. And I want you to decide. I want you to look at each and every one of us and decide who's the better person to be standing across that stage. Who will Hillary Clinton look across that stage at and say, uh-oh, that person's not going to let me get away with the normal garbage I get away with. She doesn't answer any questions now. I'll guarantee you this. If I'm on that stage in September of 16, she's going to answer questions or she's going to look bad in front of the American people. And that's what we got to be prepared to do. So I thank you for coming and spending the time this morning. You know, when we go back to New Jersey, people ask us because, you know, lots of reporters from New Jersey come up here and follow us and report back home as to what I'm up to up here. And so people ask me all the time, so what's it like? What's it like to run for President of the United States in New Hampshire? And I tell people all the time that if you're cynical about politics, if you're cynical about government, come to New Hampshire, because it will restore your faith in our democracy. Here we are on a Friday morning, and this place is full this morning with folks from New Hampshire who care deeply about their country and know about the special responsibility you have in picking the next President of the United States. You're the only ones, you and Iowa, are the only ones who are going to get to see all 17 of us. By the time Iowa's done and you guys are done, there are going to be a lot fewer of us. A lot more people are going to be given a ticket home. And so you are the folks who are going to help to make this decision. And I say to folks, you can't imagine, I did a town hall meeting 2 Fridays ago in New Boston on a Friday night in August. And we had 250 people there. On a Friday night in August, they bring their children. You bring your children. Because you know this is part of the tradition that they're going to inherit in New Hampshire to help to pick a president. So you reaffirm my belief in the American democracy, its strength, its vibrancy, and the fact that we can govern ourselves. So you're showing up this morning makes that even bigger part of my reality, and I bring it home, and Mary Pat brings it home. We tell folks. Second thing and last thing I will tell you today is when you're making this decision, I want you to go to the website. I want you to read all the detailed plans. It's really important. But you cannot and will not make this decision, I know, just on a comparison of plans. There's got to be something else, right? Because we can't anticipate everything that's going to come across the president's desk. Believe me, when I ran for governor in 2009, no one asked me, what would happen if the second worst natural disaster in American history hit your state? You lost 365,000 homes in 24 hours. No state highways were open. No water or wastewater treatment plants were operational. 51 gas stations in the entire state were operating. Every school was closed. And 75% of the state was without power. What would you do? No one asked me that question. And I can guarantee you when I got the new governor's manual, there was nothing in there for that either. So something happened that nobody could have anticipated. And everybody, when they got done briefing me, kept quiet at that table in the Emergency Operations Center in Trenton. And when they were done telling me all the problems, they all kept quiet and looked at me and said, now what do we do, Governor? That's the moment when leadership matters. We can't anticipate what that's going to be in the White House, but we know it's going to happen. So my point to you is that you can't just vote based on plans, even though I think those are important. You also have to know who the person is. So I'll end by telling you who I am. We are all, like it or not, products of our parents. Right? If you want to know the person, the first place to look is to look at their parents. Now, I have an Irish father and I had a Sicilian mother. Yeah. Listen to the chuckling. What that means is, as the oldest son in that family, that means is that at a very young age, I became very, 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 very astute at dispute resolution. This was an emotional household where everything was out there. Now, my dad is a wonderful guy. We're live streaming this morning. He's at home at the Jersey Shore. He's 82 years old. He's gregarious, outgoing Irishman. If he were here, he'd be hugging all of you. He'd be telling you embarrassing stories about me from when I was a kid. You'd really enjoy it. That's why I'm glad you're home, Dad. And he's a wonderful guy. But in the automobile of life, my dad was merely the passenger. My mom was the driver. In our house, Mom was judge, jury, and executioner, and she relished each of those roles. And she set the rules. She set the rules. And the biggest rule in our house was there was no suffering in silence. Now, I think she set this rule because she used it the most. She had a problem, you heard about it. She had a concern, she let you know. And when I got a little bit older into my teenage years, we started to push back. Like, Mom, all right, enough, we hear you. I get it, stop. And she would say, no, Christopher. You're hearing this now. I need to get it off my chest. There will be no deathbed confessions in this family. You're hearing it now. That was the way my mother ran the house, and that's what we expected. She wanted us to do that. She used to say to us all the time, like, you know, if you have a problem, I want to hear it. If you have a concern, I want to help. If there's something great happening in your life, I want to celebrate with you. I don't want to hear it later. I want to hear it now. And if you don't tell me now, don't complain, because I wasn't there to help you because you didn't let me. So that's the way she raised us. That's the way the house was run, whether we liked it or not. And so I said I had a Sicilian mother because 11 years ago my mom passed away. And she was a woman who had survived a lot in her life. She's raised by a single mother in extraordinarily poor circumstances in the city of Newark. She survived breast cancer on the week before she was sending her oldest son to go off to college. She was in her mid-40s. She survived a brain aneurysm. But on Valentine's Day of 2004, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. And I remember going to the doctor with her when she was diagnosed. And it was her and me and my dad. And they didn't know it was lung cancer then. They just found tumors on her brain. And they had to operate immediately to remove the tumors. And my mom was an endlessly optimistic person about things. And if you had survived premenopausal breast cancer and a brain aneurysm, you'd be fairly optimistic too. I remember getting in the car with her that day to take her home to get her ready to go to the hospital to get the surgery. And she looked at me and she said to me, "This is it. I'm not surviving this one." And I said to her, "Mom, you're going to be okay. You've survived all this other stuff. You're going to be okay." There was something inside her. She knew. And that was Valentine's Day. By the last week of April, I was U.S. attorney at the time. And I was off at a national conference in San Diego. And the last week of April, my younger brother called me and he said, "Listen, Mom's taking a turn for the worse. We had to put her back in the hospital. And if you want to see her, the doctors say, like, you need to come now." So I got on a red-eye flight that night. I flew home from San Diego. I got to Newark the next morning. I got in my car. I drove to the hospital. I walked in, and for those of you who've gone through this with a family member or a loved one, they started to give her morphine. So it was really near the end. They were just trying to control her pain and make her comfortable. So she was kind of coming in and out of things. So I was sitting next to the bed waiting for her to wake up. And she finally woke up, and it was kind of typical of my mother, right? I'm sitting there, and she looks at me, and she hadn't seen me for a week. And she said to me, "What day is it?" And I said, "Well, good morning to you, Mom. It's good to see you. I'm happy to come back home and see you. It's Friday." And she said to me, "What time is it?" I said, "It's 9:30 in the morning." And she said, "Go to work." And I said, "Mom, I just flew overnight from San Diego to come and spend time with you. You and I are spending time together. I'm spending the day with you today." She said, "Christopher, it is a work day. Go to work." I said, "Mom, listen, I know I work for the federal government and everything, and you're afraid you're not getting your taxpayers' money's worth, but like, I'll make up the time. Don't worry about it. I'm spending the day with you." And she reached over and she grabbed my hand and she said, "Christopher, go to work. It's where you belong. There's nothing left unsaid between us." I will tell you that other than the birth of our 4 children, it was the single most powerful moment of my life. My mother was giving me permission to let her go. And when I sat there for that moment and I thought about it, I said to myself, damn, she's right. There is nothing left unsaid between us because of the way she raised us. She turned out to be right. There was no need for deathbed confessions. Everything had been said. Every grievance had been aired. Every problem had been addressed. And I knew how much she loved me, and she knew how much I loved her. And so I did as I was told. I got up, I kissed her on the forehead, and I said, "All right, Mom, I'm going to work." And she looked at me and she said, "Good boy." And I left. And that afternoon, she went into a coma, and 3 days later, she died. It was the last time we ever spoke. And I will tell you, I have absolutely no regrets. None. None. Because it turned out that the way she raised us allowed me to have no regrets. So now, as one of the most psychoanalyzed people in American life, you know, when I tell people to get the hell off the beach, they're like, "Why did he say that?" I tell some guy to sit down and shut up. They say, "Why did he say that? Why is he saying these things? Why does he say things the way he does?" You now know it's her. Right? It's her. How could I be anything other than that? That's the way she raised me to be. So if she were still alive today to see this circus that my life has become, I know she'd have lots to say, but there'd be two things she'd say for sure. The first thing is, she'd say, so, Christopher, you're running for President of the United States, Mr. Big Shot. Remember something, I changed your diaper. I know who you are. Don't act like a big shot with me. My mother would want to be sure that my head stayed on my shoulders and that I wasn't changed by this. Second thing I know she'd say is, okay, if you're really going to do this, if you're going to ask these folks to give you the greatest trust that they can give to anybody outside their family, then you better tell them everything. You better not hold back, because in a trusting relationship, that's what we do. And so when I conduct myself the way I do, when I say whatever is on my mind, and I let you know exactly what I'm thinking and feeling, it's the way I was raised. It's who I am. And I'm not going to change. Not only because I know that's what's right, but because it's a tribute to her too. She'd want me to be this way, and I want to honor her memory by being this way. And so all the things that I say in the plans, I mean, but there are 4 things that are within my control to do, exclusively my control as president. No Congress is needed for this, no Supreme Court, no government bureaucrats, just me. And I promise you I'll give you these 4 things if I'm president. First, you'll always know what I'm thinking. I always know what I'm thinking. And sometimes you'll want to even turn the TV off, I'll suspect. Because, all right, Chris, we heard it. Enough. Let's go. Second, you'll always know how I'm feeling. I won't hide it. You'll see it. Third, you'll always know what I'm willing to fight for, because you'll see me fighting for it. And fourth, you'll know how hard I'm willing to fight for it, because I did not do this to do this job halfway. Not halfway. So if I give you those 4 things as president, we're a hell of a lot better off than we are with the guy we got there right now. A hell of a lot better off. And so I can't thank you enough for spending your time this morning. And if you give me this chance, because New Hampshire is the place that can give me this chance, you're going to decide. You're going to decide. And so you better know not only what we stand for, but you better know who we are when you walk into that voting booth on February 9th. Because you're going to be helping to decide, because I know a Republican's going to win this race if we nominate the right Republican. And so you're going to be helping to decide who's going to be the next president of the United States. So thanks you for spending the time to figure this out. Thanks for giving me the chance to speak to you, and thank you very much for listening. We appreciate it.